Stephen A's taking the Dubs in 6. Max is taking Toronto in 6. Who do you have
Toronto
winning
in
the series?
6. Max, you think that they're going to close? They would close them out in the last game in Oracle? That takes guts, man. That takes
well, I mean,
guts.
I've seen Steph Curry fold in the last game in Oracle against LeBron James and a team that, you know, LeBron was no better then, I think, than Kawhi now. If he was, it was marginally. And you know, I saw Steph Curry in a 73-win team with the greatest half-court offense of all time choke and not score a single point as a unit in the last 4 minutes and 22 seconds of that game. I've seen it before.
Brian, here's the problem with Max's argument. Max doesn't remember that back then he didn't even have facial hair. You understand what I'm saying? That was 4 years ago. You see what I'm saying? It's a long time.
So here's why it's difficult to make a prediction.
Yeah.
Because I think that this is the most challenging defense that the Warriors have faced in their 5-year run. I don't think people give enough credit to how hard it was for the Raptors to get here. The Philly 76ers are a great team. They've got some flaws, but they are great. The Milwaukee Bucks are a great team. Very difficult to defend with the way they play. The Raptors they start 2 different guys who are Defensive Player of the Year, Gasol and Kawhi. They got a whole bunch of guys who've got experience, who've been on all defensive teams. They are big, bad, flexible, long. I think that it's going to be a bit of a culture shock to the Warriors to just what kind of defense they're going to play. And that is why I think, especially without Durant, the Raptors have a shot. But if the Warriors come out tonight and just run their split cuts and blow the Raptors' defense away, then to me, that's what I got to watch. And until I see it, I really honestly don't know how the series is going to go.
My mentality is very, very simple about this. You know, I'm partial to shooters. And when we talk about defenses, it would be one thing if it was just schematically. And you know what? Steve Kerr is running an offense, your split cuts that you talk about, along with other things, pick and rolls. It could be pick and pops. It could be anything. And you're shooting because you're open. All right, I got it. My problem is that I've seen the Golden State Warriors with people draped all over them, just lighting it up.
Raining
because
threes.
let's be very, very clear that what we're talking about here. Obviously, the Raptors are a huge threat. They are no joke. Defensively, I think they're elite, no question. But I want to make sure people understand that when you're talking about Steph Curry, you are talking about the greatest shooter we have ever seen in the history of basketball. In Klay Thompson, a legitimate argument could be made. This is one of the top 5 shooters in the history of basketball. We don't call them that because they hit open shots. We call them that because when they get on fire, it don't matter who's on them. They launch and it drops. That's what I'm talking about. And when you think about the possibility of that happening, remember, you saw this, Brian. Milwaukee missed a lot of open shots. As great as Toronto's defense is, Milwaukee had a lot of open shots. Golden State ain't missing no shots.
One thing I'm saying, I'll take you back to Game 3 of the finals last year in Cleveland. So the last time they started a series with their first, well, they didn't start the series, but their first road game in the finals. Steph went 3 of 16 in that game.
Yeah.
Klay went 4 of 11. They had a game where they both were off. It was in a hostile arena, pressure, all that stuff. Now, they were ahead in the series. They weren't feeling too much pressure, but it was a hostile arena.
Kevin Durant.
They had Kevin Durant to go for 37.
That's right.
Okay? And crush the Cavs' spirits, basically. The thing is, if Steph has a bad game tonight, and I know it feels like Steph hasn't had a bad shooting game in 6 weeks because he kind of hasn't, but if Steph has a bad game, they don't have the safety net anymore. And while I admit Steph could come out tonight and hit 11 threes and they could blow him off the court, it's just as likely that he could go 3 of 16 again, and they don't have that safety net. So that's why, without Durant, without Kawhi having to work as hard on defense because Durant's not on the court, this is their window. Apply the pressure now.
Before Max chimes in, I would ask you to be very careful about your words, Brian Windhorst. It's one thing to sit up there and say it's possible, but you use the words very likely. Just as likely as it is for him to explode is as likely for him to go 3 of 16. It's not as likely for him to go 3 for 16. Not as likely.
True,
I'm just saying.
But
be careful.
In the first 6 games of the playoffs, Steph shot the ball very poorly.
I understand.
He had a half where he had 0 points, and he had a half where he had 33.
Right.
Which are you getting? That's why I got to watch to find out. I don't know.
I have yet to see Steph Curry and this goes for a lot of the Warriors' lead scorers, right? Like Steph, and I think the same thing about KD. when they haven't had the overwhelming odds in their favor, I have yet to see big-time clutch performances when the team has needed it most. That's why they lost to Cleveland. They surely would have lost to Cleveland in the first go-round, too, had LeBron's second-best player not been Matthew Dellavedova. Steph, as the leader of a team in an even odds kind of final series, has yet to prove the thing that you're talking about, Stephen A. Brian, I challenge you. Has Steph Curry been the best version of himself in any finals?
No.
In any finals, he's had moments in games where he's been the best version of himself. But for the whole series, he has not yet.
Yeah.
But I think he's absolutely capable. And that second half that he had in Houston, where he put up 33, Stephen A. and I were there, was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen out of him. And it may not have been in the finals, but it doesn't mean it's any less impressive.
Though.